You were the only one who really had faith in the voters, Batman.
Today, I want to compare the debate performances of Presidents Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Now, I want to stress that I am not endorsing any candidate. I don't care if you're going to vote Republican or Democrat or Independent, Libertarian, what have you. Vote for whoever you want. I'm not trying to sway your vote or influence your vote.
I never would have believed that the polls could be wrong.
There have been other candidates who've trusted too much in the polls, Mayor Linseed, and they found out that it's the votes that count.
Reagan knew that every time the independent candidate got a vote, it was a vote taken away from me.
Former Governor Ronald Reagan, the Republican Party candidate, and Congressman John Anderson, who is running as an independent, accepted the League of Women Voters' invitation to be here. President Carter declined.
But let's go back to 1980, looking at the performance of Ronald Reagan in his debate with President Jimmy Carter. The League of Women Voters organized two presidential debates, the first on September 21st, 1980, and the second on October 28th, also 1980. The second presidential debate is the second most watched debate in American history. The Republican nominee, Ronald Reagan, participated in both debates. Independent candidate John B. Anderson only participated in the first debate, while the Democratic nominee and incumbent President Jimmy Carter participated in the second debate. The Carter campaign, believing that a three-way debate between Carter, Reagan, and Anderson would boost Anderson's campaign, and tried to push for an earlier debate only featuring Carter and Reagan. This plan was supported by the chairs of the Democratic and Republican National Committee. The two-person debate did not materialize, and Carter declined to debate alongside Anderson.
But I don't see where it is inflationary to have people keep more of their earnings and spend it, and it isn't inflationary for government to take that money away from them.
Reagan's most notable moments include using the phrase, "there you go again," and asking whether or not Americans were better off than they were 4 years ago.
Typically is against such a proposal.
Governor, there you go again. When I opposed Medicare, there was another piece of legislation meeting the same problem before the Congress. I think when you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Nielsen Media Research states that the second presidential debate garnered 80.6 million viewers. It was the most watched debate in American history until the first presidential debate of 2016. An unscientific televote poll carried out only by ABC immediately after the debate received about 650,000 responses, two-thirds in favor of Reagan. Ronald Reagan appeared calm, cool, and collected, but President Carter appeared tired, frustrated, and withdrawn. He could not answer Reagan's criticism of the economy and his performance as president.
When Mr. Carter became president, inflation was 4.8%. It is now running at 12.7%. He has blamed the people of living too well.
President Jimmy Carter faced a difficult re-election effort, with Iranian Islamists holding most of the American embassy at staff hostage. Sagging economy, and even the president hinting the country was in a malaise. In addition to these challenges, he faced the charismatic former governor of California and actor Ronald Reagan, and an independent challenge from moderate Congressman Joe Anderson. Now, you would think that Anderson would take more away from Reagan since he was a Republican, but this did not hinder Reagan from winning the largest electoral vote of any challenger facing an incumbent president in the history of the nation. Reagan was originally a Democrat but turned to the Republican Party and was elected to the first of two terms as governor of California in 1966. He tried unsuccessfully for the Republican presidential nomination in 1968 and 1976, and by the time of the 1980 election, he had been stumping in one form or another for that election for nearly 4 years. Most incumbent presidents avoid having a challenger to their nomination, but Carter received opposition from Senator Ted Kennedy, the last surviving brother of the late President John F. Kennedy. As Carter's standing in the public opinion polls plummeted in 1978 and 1979, thanks largely to his failure to solve the country's economic woes, Kennedy was widely seen as the logical Democratic alternative. When the senator from Massachusetts finally declared his candidacy late in 1979, his freewheeling brand of liberalism and his role in a fatal incident at Chappaquiddick caused many voters to have serious doubts about him. Carter and his aides played upon these doubts with considerable skill. Kennedy was also hurt by his rambling, incoherent answer to a seemingly simple question posed by reporter Roger Mudd of CBS News.
Why do you want to be president?
Well, were I to make the announcement and to run, the reasons that I would run is because I have a great belief.
The Carter camp was unquestionably aided during the primaries by the ongoing hostage crisis in Iran, which began on November 4, 1979, exactly 1 year before the general election. Followers of the Ayatollah Khomeini, who had toppled the Shah of Iran in 1978, stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, protesting the Shah's admittance to the United States for treatment of an ultimate fatal cancer condition. Dozens of Americans who were inside the embassy at the time were taken hostage. Some were later released, but more than 50 remained hostages throughout 1980, despite an abortive rescue operation ordered by Carter. It is axiomatic that Americans rally around a president in times of international crisis, and that was precisely what happened during the Democratic primaries, to Kennedy's obvious and outspoken chagrin. Kennedy victories in a number of key states, including New York and California, were unable to stave off the inevitable. Although Kennedy did not have enough delegates to win the convention, he tried unsuccessfully to open it in an attempt to win the nomination. Ultimately, Carter, along with Vice President Walter Mondale, were renominated at a fractious Democratic convention in New York City that was punctuated by Kennedy's avoidance of shaking Carter's hands on the podium. In the general election, Carter carried only 6 states in the District of Columbia. Reagan won just over 50% of the vote, while Carter captured 41%. Anderson finished with 7% of the vote. In the Electoral College, the scale of Reagan's victory was dramatic, 489 to 49. Carter became the first elected incumbent to be defeated for re-election as president since Herbert Hoover lost to Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1932. Reagan, at age 69, became the oldest president-elect in the country's history.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
Now let's look at the election of 2016, in which Republican Donald Trump lost the popular vote to Democrat Hillary Clinton by more than 2.8 million votes, but won 30 states and the decisive Electoral College with 304 electoral votes to Clinton's 227, and thus became the 45th President of the United States. Donald Trump would emulate Ronald Reagan's mantra of "Make America Great" and would try to mimic the former president's personality. The tumultuous, abrasive 2016 campaign defied established political norms. Clinton's campaign featured superior organization and fundraising, and almost every election eve poll pointed to a comfortable victory for her, just like the polls in 1979 and 1980 showed for the incumbent Jimmy Carter. But Trump's anti-Washington appeal to white working-class voters outside major cities and pivotal manufacturing states proved to be the key factor in what several publications called the most stunning upset in American history. Clinton enjoyed solid backing from the Democratic establishment. A surprising and spirited challenge emerged, however, from Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, self-proclaimed Democrat socialist. He proved to be a spoiler for her, just as Ted Kennedy was for Jimmy Carter in 1980.
Smart politicians trust the voters, not the polls. After all, if you can't trust the voters, whom can you trust?
The United States presidential election of 1984, American presidential election held on November 6th, in which Republican Ronald Reagan was elected to a second term, defeating Democrat Walter Mondale, a former U.S. vice president. Reagan won 49 states en route to amassing 525 electoral votes to Mondale's 13, one of the biggest landslides in U.S. election history. The election was also notable for being the first time a major party had a woman on its ticket, Geraldine Ferraro, Mondale's running mate. The Democratic ticket was slammed as Fritz and It's. Well, I can't use the actual word here on YouTube. It's had a T in front of it. The word It's with a T in front of it. Okay, that's as close as I can come to saying it without getting a strike. But anyway, critics of Mondale's choice would describe the ticket as such. During the primaries, Reagan faced no opposition and was easily renominated by the Republican Party. On the Democratic side, however, the 1984 campaign was notable. Jesse Jackson, an eloquent African-American preacher who had been a young activist in the civil rights movement in the 1960s, announced his candidacy for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1983. At the time, no one believed he would win either nomination or election, but his public stature guaranteed him equal opportunity to compete seriously for the nomination. In addition to Jackson, the Democratic primary field was packed by presidential wannabes, including Reuben Askew of Florida, George McGovern, Alan Cranston, Gary Hart, and Ernest Hollings. Mondale was the pre-odds favorite as the former vice president, and John Glenn was considered to be the most serious challenger. Glenn ran a lackluster campaign, and Gary Hart rose to the forefront. Walter Mondale had to make a comeback, which he did with his Where's the Beef campaign.
When I hear your new ideas, I'm reminded of that ad, Where's the Beef?
Gary Hart was caught with his pants down, literally, with the Miss South Carolina World Beauty Pageant winner Donna Rice.
Believe me, if my intent was to have a relationship with a woman, particularly a very attractive one, I certainly wouldn't have gone about it this way. I invited press scrutiny.
Mondale made history by choosing his running mate, Geraldine Ferraro, the first woman selected by a major political party for its presidential ticket. At the time, Ferraro was a 3-term congresswoman from New York. It was hoped that her nomination would galvanize the campaign. It did initially, but the Democratic ticket was derailed almost immediately by a month-long controversy over the finances of Ferraro and her husband, a New York real estate operator. The Mondale-Ferraro ticket attempted without success to find an issue that would resonate with voters. There seemed to be some hope for the Mondale-Ferraro ticket during the first presidential debate, where Reagan appeared tired. But Reagan came roaring back with his calm, cool, and collected personality. He seemed down-home and folksy and very likable, and even got Mondale laughing with his response to the question about his age.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
The results for this election, this was the first time since 1960 that the voter turnout percentage rose. Reagan was re-elected in the November 6th election in an electoral and popular vote landslide, winning 49 states by the time the ballots were finished counting on election night. He won a record 525 electoral votes, a total of 538 possible, received 58.8% of the popular vote. Despite Ferraro's selection, 55% of women who voted did so for Reagan, and his 54 to 61% of the Catholic vote, the highest for a Republican candidate in history. Mondale's 13 electoral college votes marked the lowest total of any major presidential candidate since Alf Landon's 1936 loss to Franklin D. Roosevelt, the fewest of any Democrat since Stephen A. Douglas claimed 12 in the 1860 election, as well as the worst for a Democrat in a two-way race. This was the second largest share of the Electoral College since 1820, and the most raw electoral votes received by a candidate. This is the last time any candidate won the popular vote by double digits.
No, you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question because the question is radical left. Will you shut up, man?
Now let's compare that to Donald Trump's bid for re-election against Joe Biden. There were initially supposed to be 3 debates. However, Donald Trump came down with the COVID virus and refused to debate unless it would be in person. As a result, there were only 2 debates. In 2019, Trump claimed that the 2016 debates were biased and suggested that he may not participate in further CPD-hosted debates.
Moving on to the Trump and Biden records.
They'll overthrow you.
When a president, I'm going to ask a question.
In December 2019, Frank J. Fahrenkopf Jr., co-chairman of the CPD, met with Brad Parscale, Trump's campaign chairman, to discuss Trump's comments. Fahrenkopf said the president wanted to debate, but they had concerns about whether or not to do it with the commission. Did Trump have a good reason to suggest certain debates were biased, or was he simply trying to avoid debating Joe Biden? Remember this moment during the Romney-Obama debates. Since Biden's successful nomination in the Democratic primaries, Trump had attempted to cast doubt over Biden's abilities, claiming that he was suffering from dementia and that he was taking performance-enhancing drugs in the primaries. Trump called for Biden to be drug tested before the debate. Biden mocked the idea, Trump also claimed that Biden would use a hidden electronic earpiece with a debate, demanding that Biden's ears be searched. Biden declined. Debate was divided into 6 segments: Trump's and Biden's records, the Supreme Court, the COVID-19 pandemic, race and violence in cities, election integrity, and the economy. Each was approximately 15 minutes in length. Wallace introduced each topic and gave each candidate 2 minutes to speak, followed by facilitated discussion between them. The allotted time was generally not upheld. Trump repeatedly interrupted and criticized Biden during Biden's answers to the initial questions, as well as during the facilitated discussions, and was chastised by Wallace several times for doing so. On several occasions, Wallace pleaded with Trump to respect the rules and norms of the debate. At one point, Biden refused to answer a question given by Wallace, leading to Trump interrupting him. Biden then remarked to Trump, "Will you shut up, man?"
We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch. Down
All right,
18%.
gentlemen,
China ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out.
Biden also said in a response to allegations that he would implement socialist medicine, "The party is me. I am the Democratic Party right now. The Democrat platform is what I, in fact, approved of." Additionally, Biden called Trump a clown during the discussion about health care plans. So Reagan's performance came off as fun, humorous, and lighthearted. He was in command of that second debate, as Trump had been in the first debate with Hillary Clinton. Mondale never gained a footing in that debate at all. In fact, he was even laughing at Reagan's joke. By contrast, Trump came off as mean-spirited, angry, and was not relatable to the public at all. In fact, he made Biden look like a victim of bullying. This turned off most people who viewed the debate and left them cold on the incumbent president, who essentially blew his chance for re-election. Election night, November 3rd, ended without a clear winner, as many state results were too close to call, and millions of votes remained uncounted, including in the battleground states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Results were delayed in these states due to local rules on counting mail-in ballots. The ballots became particularly prevalent in the 2020 election due to the widespread outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over roughly 67 million mail-in ballots were submitted, over doubling the previous election's 33.5 million. In a victory declared by midnight, Trump won the swing state of Florida by over 3 percentage points, an increase from his 1.2 percentage point margin in 2016, having seen significant gains in support among the Latino community in Miami-Dade County. Shortly after 12:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Biden made a short speech in which he urged his supporters to be patient while the votes are counted. He said he believed he was on track to win this election. Shortly before 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Trump made a speech in a room full of supporters, falsely asserting that he had won the election and calling for a stop to all vote counting, saying that continued counting was a fraud on the American people, and we will be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Biden campaign denounced these attempts, claiming that the Trump campaign was engaging in a naked effort to take away the democratic rights of American citizens. Later, it was confirmed that Biden also had flipped the traditionally reliable Republican states of Arizona and Georgia en route to a final victory in the Electoral College of 306 to 232. In winning the popular vote with more than 81 million votes, Biden garnered more votes than any presidential candidate in U.S. history. That Trump's total of more than 74 million votes was the second highest count ever recorded, indicated the passionate involvement of both sides of the electorate in this election. That was our show for today. What do you think? Do you find that the debates helped or hurt the candidates in either of these elections or any of these elections? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. And while you're at it, I'd be honored if you subscribe to my channel, press the button to stay informed, and check out my Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter franchise also in the comments section below. Until next time, this is Kevin Gibbons saying, live long and prosper. May the force be with you. Keep reaching for the stars.